It's a Pretty World. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm using the September Card Kit from Simon Says Stamp called Look for the Rainbow, and the stamp set is also called the same thing, and I'll be using the bouquet of flowers up in that corner. And I'm making a gatefold card, and the gatefold card is like how we make a normal one, which is 8.5 by 5.25, and scored at 2 and I think 3/4. Sorry, 2 and 1/8, and that'll give you a normal gatefold card. But my idea for the card is to create a die cut within the gatefold card. So actually, it's not a full rectangle when you open it, but in fact, there is a circle opening right in the middle, like two semi-cut circles on either flaps on either side. So what I did is I chose a circle die which was very close to the semicircle or half shape of the stamp that I used, and then I die cut that on both sides. So make sure when you're die cutting, you're opening your card and you're opening both the flaps, so you're not cutting either side of it. So I just die cut it, and then it gave me that circle, like semicircle on both the flaps of the gatefold card, and that was the gatefold. And I kept that aside, and I started to work on the stamping. So for the stamping itself, I used Bristol smooth cardstock. I wanted to do some what do you call a Zig clean color coloring for this particular card, and I used antique linen distress oxide ink because I wanted to do no line coloring. So I stamped that bouquet image twice onto that paper, and the bird image that is also included in the stamp set once. When I was all done, I was ready for coloring. I did keep all the coloring in so you could see it. I didn't color everything on the video, just this one bouquet, so you could see exactly how I colored it. If you want to skip ahead, you could definitely go ahead and skip ahead until the point where I've colored and cut the images. I didn't really die cut the images because I didn't have the dies for these, but I did fussy cut the images for after I colored it. So I chose some not Prismacolor, sorry, Zig clean color markers, watercolor markers. I pre-chose some in the shades of pinks and yellows and oranges and greens and a couple of blues. And then I started coloring. So I did very basic coloring. I didn't really do a lot of I didn't do a lot of lots of detail, because it's fairly simple flowers. It's not too complicated. There's not too many grooves or anything like that. So I just kept the coloring as simple as possible too. So wherever I saw that there was a shadow in the flower, I put the darker shade of red. In this case, I used a red color, and then I used a mid-tone pink, and then a really light pink to blend it out. And the scribble that you see on the side there is because I want to make sure that my light pen, when I bring it back to the flower image, I'm not bringing the darker color, because the darker color is picked up by those light pens. So you want to make sure that you scribble out the darker color from the pen, so you don't so that your petals don't look the same color, but there's a little bit of variation from where the folds of the petals, where the shadows of the petals would be, to where it's outside, where the sun or the light would be hitting it more. So wherever the light is hitting it more, obviously, those places are going to be lighter. So if you don't take away those colors from the lighter shaded markers, you will tend to make the same color throughout the petal, and that wouldn't give you dimensions. I wouldn't give you, especially when you're doing a no line coloring, you want to make sure that you show the different petals. So that's the way you show the different petals. And I continued coloring the petals the same way. And then after I was done coloring the petals, it was time for me to do the inside portion of the flower, where the stamens would be. And then what I did was I took two shades of brown, one in a really deeper shade and one in a lighter shade, and I just stippled that color on top. I didn't really color it, but I just like stippled it with the darker color, and then I stippled it with the lighter brown. What it did is it just created a little bit of texture in between the in between those flowers, and also it left a few white patches, white spaces, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, I would have, hindsight is 2020, if I was thinking ahead, I would have probably left a few white spaces even on the petals while I was coloring, but I wasn't thinking. So anyway, but I did leave a little bit of white spaces inside those inside the flower, so it looks like the light is reflecting in certain places. Now it was time to color two other flowers that's also part of this bouquet, a yellow, which I decided to do in a tone of orangey yellow color. So I put down a base of yellow, and then over it I went with the shade of orange, a darker, deeper orange and a lighter orange. So deeper orange was in all those places where the petal would be folding on each other, where it would be creating shadows. Um, those are the places I would put the darker shade of orange. And then I continued blending the same way I did for the orange, sorry, not the orange, the pink petal. You know, it doesn't, once you get, really, the zig color markers are so easy to work with. Unlike watercoloring with actual watercolor paint and brush and water, zig color markers are very, very easy compared to these. I mean, it doesn't really require a lot of thinking or a lot of planning, because these colors blend so beautifully on the Bristol spool. Now that's a key. I have realized Bristol smooth paper is the only good paper for these particular markers. So when you use Bristol smooth paper, these colors just blend so beautifully. You don't have to do a lot of work. You don't have to do a lot of blending. You don't really have to put a lot of effort to get the the um, the finish that you're looking for, and they look so beautiful and they look like watercolor. Obviously, you could use water, like if you don't have a lighter shade of color, you could put a darker color down and then just use a little bit of water in a brush, or an aqua pen, and just pull out those darker shades and you will be good. But because I did have most of the colors with me, I went three shades. I did dark shade, a mid-tone, and a lighter shade. It's almost like I was using my Copic markers, except that the blending was so much more easier that it would be on my Copic markers. Now going to the leaves, I did the same thing. I put down the darker shade where the veins of the leaf is, so the veins look predominant, and then I blended out the mid-tone, and then I blended it out with the lighter shade, and that just gave the variation in the leaves as well. It showed the lighter colors, the darker colors, it showed where the veins were. Again, these the illustration of the stamp is not too complicated. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, and you want to keep that color as well very simple and very straightforward. You could definitely step it up and add veins to your flowers and veins to your petals, and I mean, you could do so much more, obviously, but I didn't want to do all that because I wanted to keep the focus on the fact that it was a unique gatefold card and then I needed some colors on it. So I just continued coloring all the leaves the way I was talking about. And after I was done coloring with all the leaves, I took another brown pen and I outlined, there's like tiny, tiny twig-like branches sticking out of this little bouquet. It's really pretty. It's very dainty, uh, tiny twigs, which I took another brown marker and I just went right over it. But it looks like I didn't do that. Instead, I actually did the tiny little flowers, like they're like dots of flowers. I don't know what flowers they are in nature, but they are little flowers. So because I don't know what they are, I decided to do blue because I just wanted to bring in some blue because eventually I was going to color my bird blue. So if you know what those flowers are, please do let me know in my little box at the bottom. I would love to know what it is. So the next time I'm coloring, I might maybe make it look a little more realistic. Anyway, so I put the shades of blue, which was really not blue, it was aqua, like a greenish blue. And after I was done coloring all of it, I fussy cut them, and I was ready to put the card together. So what I did was I placed the two half circle right in the middle, and then I took this designer paper. Actually, this designer paper came along with this card kit from September, and it has some really beautiful colors. And I chose this cloudy designer paper, and I cut it 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Sorry, 4 by 5 1/2, and then I scored it at 1/4 of an inch the on the top side. So what I could do is I could put this inside the gatefold. So then I would stick that on the top, and then you could open it and write your message inside. So you don't have to really show the message outside what you're going to write, but you have a place to write inside, and then there's something to showcase your flowers, and then your window doesn't like look too bland. And then I started to add some yellow color and some colors on that, and then I just made a boo-boo, and the yellow color went on my cloudy background, which was white there, and I was so disappointed. And then, not to do that mistake again, I cleaned up my surface, and I put a copy paper inside it, and I started to color again. And I just diluted the water. I diluted the paint that I scribbled down with water, and then just went all over the edges of that semicircle on both sides. But I was telling you, as I was playing, while I was positioning the stamps, I thought I could cover that boo boo up. I could do something. I was so disappointed because there was only this one paper in that pack, and I was really really unhappy. But I kept going with it for a little while, and I tried to do all kinds of things to it, and I decided, okay, I'll just go ahead and tear the flowers and think about it later. So what I did was I just laid a very thin line of glue on the edges of the semicircle, and then I placed the flowers right on either side of those semi. And then here you see what I did. It was just bothering me. I just changed that paper, and I used another designer paper for the flap inside. Then I took the Thinking of You stamp, which is also part of the stamps of the same stamp set, and I decided to heat emboss it on white onto a black cardstock. So I prepared the black cardstock with anti-static powder, and then I inked it up with Simon Says embossing ink. And then when I went to pour my ink, I suddenly realized, that's not a white embossing powder, that's really clear embossing powder. And it was hilarious, but eventually, obviously, I changed it, and then I put white embossing powder and I embossed it. And then I used this banner die set from Simon Says Stamp, and I cut this little banner out of it, and then my idea was to use that as a sentiment going across the gatefold card. So I just adhered one side of it on like just the corners of that banner onto the left side of the semicircle floral bunch, and then I left the other side open. On the other side, I put foam dots on the bird, and then I popped it right there. So what happened when I put the foam dot on the side and I popped it, I could tuck in the Thinking of You behind the bird. And here I'm adding some Nuvo crystal drops, which also came in the kit. Beautiful, beautiful gemstones. And then I just added them all over the circle, the wreath. Actually, it's like a wreath, which I created. And then there you go. That's there. You can write your sentiment there, and then you just take that and tuck it under the bed. And that's all for the card. I hope you liked it, and I see you next time. Thank you.